Hello guys, welcome to podcast 22 of Let's Revise MBBS, and this is the continuation of the previous podcast. Okay, so here we will be talking about mechanism of labor and partogram. Okay, so mechanism of labor. So first there is engagement. So we have seen what is engagement. Engagement is when the largest fetal diameter, that is biparietal diameter, crosses the level of ischial spine. Okay, so that is engagement. Then the next step is descent. Actually, descent is a ongoing process, but still we put it next to engagement. Okay. So what are the factors which help in descent? First is the amniotic fluid pressure. Okay. Then the pressure of the abdominal muscles of the woman, and the fetus is also extending and straightening its body. Okay. So these are the some three factors which help in descent. Then after descent we have flexion. So head goes into flexion. So there is levator ani. Okay, and this levator ani opposes the descent. Okay, when it opposes the descent, it pushes the head into flexion. Okay, so levator ani muscle is an important muscle which causes flexion. Okay, after flexion there is internal rotation. Now see, we have seen that the most common position in cephalic presentation is LOT, left occipito-transverse. That means the occiput is at 3 o'clock position, right? And now it has to rotate and it has to come to occipito-anterior position, direct occipito-anterior. So that is 2/8 of a circle, right? 90 degrees. So from left occipito-transverse, it has to come to direct occipito-anterior. This is 2/8 of a circle, and this is internal rotation. So internal rotation occurs from LOT to direct occipito-anterior, and it is 2/8 of a circle. Okay, now tell me, when the position of the fetus was LOT, what was the position of shoulder? It will be perpendicular to the position of head, right? So the shoulders will be along direct occipito-anterior and direct occipito-posterior, along the line joining 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock, right? So now if the head of the fetus is turning 90 degrees, the shoulder can't just remain there. There will be a torsional force there, right? So the shoulder rotate by 1/8 of a circle, okay, to relieve this torsion. So initially the position of shoulder was from direct occipito-anterior to direct occipito-posterior, but since the head rotates from 3 o'clock to 12 o'clock, that is from LOT to direct occipito-anterior, even the shoulder have to rotate in the same direction, right? They can't rotate in opposite direction. If they rotate in opposite direction, there will be further increase in torsion. So they have to rotate in the same direction, but they don't rotate by 2/8 of a circle, they just rotate by 1/8 of a circle. Okay. Now after internal rotation there is crowning. So crowning is when the head of the baby is visible, and when it does not go back inside the cavity. Okay, it remains, we can still see even if the uterus is dilated. That is crowning. So this crowning is the best time to give episiotomy. Okay. After crowning, there is delivery of baby by extension. So the occiput was facing the pubis, right? Direct occipito-anterior position. So we pull the head in extension and the baby comes out. Okay. To prevent any perineal tear, we give the support by the left hand. Okay, and we pull the baby outside by extension. Okay. This maneuver is called as Ridgen maneuver. Okay, what do we do in Ridgen maneuver exactly? We push the occiput posteriorly and pull the chin anteriorly. So we try to extend it, and our assistant can give the support to the perineum. Okay, this is known as Ridgen maneuver, and it is used in normal labor for delivery by extension. Okay, and the next step is external rotation. So external rotation is exactly reverse of internal rotation. In internal rotation, the position was shifting from LOT to occipito-anterior. So when the baby comes out, the head rotates from direct occipital anterior to again back to left occipital transverse. Okay, so it means that the face of the baby will face the right thigh of mother. Okay, because the position is left occipital transverse after coming out. Right. So if the head goes back to its original position, the shoulders will also go back to their original position. So what was the original position of shoulder? 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Okay, so direct occipital anterior to direct occipital posterior. So when we remove the head by extension, the shoulders are directly anterior and posterior. So now we deliver the shoulders. First we deliver the upper shoulder, which is anteriorly, okay, which is at the level of direct occipital anterior. So we remove that shoulder and then we remove the posterior shoulder. Okay, so this is the mechanism of labor, or how the process of labor takes place. Now let's talk about partogram. So what is partogram? It is like ECG, electrocardiogram, is used to record the activity of heart. Similarly, partogram is used to record the entire activity of parturition. Okay, so it has three parts: fetal part, maternal part, and labor. Okay, during the labor. So in fetal part, again we have three parts. First, we record fetal heart rate. So whether we have to check whether the fetus is going into distress or it's not going to distress. So for that, we record fetal heart rate. In the first stage of labor, we record it every 30 minutes, and in the second stage, we record it every 15 minutes. Okay, this is the first part. Then we see amniotic fluid. Okay, so if the amniotic membranes are intact, we label it as I. If they are ruptured, we label it as R. Okay, now depending on color of the fluid, we can either label it as C, M, or B. C is clear amniotic fluid, M is meconium stained amniotic fluid, and B is blood stained amniotic fluid. Okay, so this was about meconium amniotic fluid. And lastly, we have molding. So molding, we have seen that it is the overlapping of parietal bones. It has 4 grades: 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, 0 is no molding. 1, we have actually 3 grades. So 1 is the 2 parietal bones are just touching each other. That is 1 plus. 2 plus is the parietal bones are overlapping, but they can again separate. So that's reversible. And in 3 plus, there is overlapping of parietal bones and they cannot be separated. Okay, so these are the 3 stages, and it is useful in assessing obstructed labor. Okay, so 3 parts about 3 fetal parts. In mother, we record temperature, pulse, BP. Okay, and the main part is labor part. In labor part, we assess dilatation of cervix, descent of fetus, contractions of uterus, and drugs, like at which timing we are giving drug and what is the dose of drugs. So these are the 4 things specifically which we keep a check of in the labor. So dilatation. So dilatation of cervix, we have seen that the minimum rate should be 1 centimeter per hour. Okay, so these are partogram is first of all formulated by WHO. Okay, and the guidelines which we talked about, that the latent phase is from 0 to 5 centimeters and the active stage is from 6 to 10 centimeters. These are according to ACOG. Okay, American College of Obstetric and Gynecology. But the partogram is made by WHO. So here we have to follow the WHO guidelines. So WHO says that the latent phase is from 0 to 3 centimeters and active phase is from 4 centimeter onwards. Okay, so in partogram we start marking the dilatation of cervix from 4 centimeter. Okay, now there are 2 straight lines on the partogram. One is the alert line and the second one is action line. So alert line, and both start from 4 centimeter of dilatation, and there is separation of 4 hours between alert line and action line. Okay, why? Because we have seen that what is arrest of labor. If the cervical dilatation for 4 there is no cervical dilatation for 4 hours, then we call it as arrest of labor. That's why action line and alert line are separated by 4 hours, and their slope is 1. Okay, now on x-axis we have time and y-axis we have dilatation. So the rate should be 1 centimeter per hour, right? So both the lines are parallel, but they are separated by 4 hours. Okay, and PV is recommended every 4 hourly. So every 4 hourly we check how much the cervix is dilated, and we keep on plotting on the partogram. So there are three we divide because of these two lines. The partogram is divided into 3 parts. First to the left of the alert line, then between alert and action line, and then to the right of alert line. So if it is to the left of alert line, everything is good, the rate is good. Okay, if it is between alert, if it crosses the alert line, then we should refer the patient to a higher center. Okay, and if it crosses the action line, then we need to check whether it is due to inadequate contractions. If the contractions are adequate and still the line has crossed the action line, then we need to take the patient for C-section. Okay, so this was about dilatation. Now let's talk about contractions. So what are adequate contractions? There should be 3 contractions in 10 minutes, and each contraction should last for 45 seconds. And the intensity of contraction should be 65 to 75 mm of Hg. So these are adequate contraction. Okay, less than this we call it inadequate contraction. So there is a unit of contraction which is Montevideo units. So what is this exactly? It is a combination of number of contractions and intensity of contraction. So what we do is we measure the number of contraction in 10 minutes. So let's say there are 4 contraction in 10 minutes, and we see the pressure, the intensity of contraction. Let's say the intensity of contraction is 60 mm of Hg. So we multiply 60 by 4. So it is 240. So it becomes 240 Montevideo units. Okay, and the normal Montevideo unit should be between 220 to 250 to say adequate contraction. So now what is tachysystole? When the contractions are more than 5 in 10 minutes, we call it as tachysystole. And this contraction should be recorded for 10 minutes. Like we should palpate, we should keep our hand on the uterus for 10 minutes and check how many contractions are there, for how long they are present. Okay, and we do this every half an hour. So if depending on how many contractions are there, we mark those many boxes. So if there are 3 contractions, we mark 3 boxes. If there are 4 contractions, we mark 4 boxes. And also depends on duration of time. If it is less than 20 seconds, then we mark it as dots. If it is 20 to 40 seconds, we mark it with lines. And if it is more than 40 seconds, we completely shade the box. Okay, so this was about partogram. There is a simplified partogram which is used in rural areas, or it is easier to understand. So it's similar. There are 2 lines, alert line, action line. Left of alert line is colored with green. Between alert and action line, it's yellow color, and beyond action line there is pink color. Okay, so this was about simplified partogram. Coming on to the last topic for today's podcast, which is episiotomy. So episiotomy is a surgically planned incision which we give to prevent rupture of perineum. Okay, by itself. Since here we are ourselves cutting or ourselves giving the incision, we can surgically correct it. Okay, but important point here is that episiotomy should not be given to all the patients. Okay, this is recommended by WHO. The best method to prevent perineal tear is the Röntgen maneuver, which we talked about in the previous podcast. Okay, when do we need to give episiotomy? When the baby is big, it is having macrosomia. When the patient is preemie and her perineum is rigid. Okay, when it is occipito-posterior position. So these are the indications where we need to give episiotomy. Okay, it's not compulsory and should not be given in all the patients. Now there are 2 types, mediolateral and medial. So mediolateral is at 60 degree from the vertical, and medial is exactly medial. So there are many advantages of medial episiotomy. There is less bleeding. It is a first degree perineal tear. Then repair is easy. Healing is faster. All these are advantages of median episiotomy, but we still prefer mediolateral just because of one advantage, that mediolateral does not involve anal sphincter. That's the only reason why we give mediolateral episiotomy. And if we give median episiotomy, anal sphincter can get involved, and it can go into tertiary or quaternary or third degree or fourth degree, perineal tear if we give medial episiotomy. That's why median episiotomy is avoided and only mediolateral episiotomy is given. Now, what are the degrees of perineal tear? The first degree is that just the vaginal mucosa and skin is torn. Second degree is, along with first degree, muscles are also torn. Third degree is when the anal sphincter is involved, and fourth degree is when the rectal mucosa is also involved. Okay, so these are the 4 stages. So median episiotomy is actually a first degree perineal tear, and mediolateral is second degree, since we are also cutting muscles. But still, as I have said, mediolateral episiotomy is preferred. Okay, so that's all for today's podcast. Keep studying and keep enjoying. We'll meet in the tomorrow's podcast. Chalo, bye bye.